The Islamic State of Khorasan has reached Moscow, if the evidence is to be believed. Based in Central Asia, it's about creating an Islamic cosmology on Earth, and in the process hitting Russia, its former and current overlord. So, is Russia fighting the wrong enemy in the wrong time in the wrong place? Join me, Jan Darasz, for How We Got Here.
The attack on the Crocus City Hall in Krasnogorsk is another recent terrorist attack carried out by the Islamic State of Khorasan province, indicating a shift in the organization's strategy, which had previously focused on Afghanistan. A specific feature of the current situation is the sudden increase in direct involvement in attacks by citizens of post-Soviet Central Asian countries, primarily Tajiks. Better known as ISIS-K, the group is named after an old term for the region that included parts of Iran, Turkmenistan and Afghanistan. It emerged in eastern Afghanistan in late 2014 and quickly established a reputation for extreme brutality.
This group sees itself as loyal to the Islamic State leadership in Iraq and Syria, but since that group has been hit very hard by the US-led military campaign, ISIS-K has become one of the strongest, if not the strongest, part of the Islamic State today.
Many of the ISIS-K members are of Central Asian origin. Between 2011 and 2019, up to 5,000 people from Central Asia were involved with ISIS and related organizations in Syria and Iraq. Central Asian individuals carried out terrorist attacks in the USA, Turkey, Sweden and Russia, and were also involved in thwarted attack preparations in Germany.
So they seem to be shifting from being a regional group to doing more attacks farther afield, whether it's in Moscow or in Europe. So this is a group that always claimed to have ambitions beyond Afghanistan and Pakistan, but now we're starting to see at least some attacks.
The uniqueness of this problem, effectively exploited by ISIS, lies in the massive labor migration from the region, especially to Russia. Paradoxically, it is in Russia that radicalization occurs, including among Tajiks. A significant issue remains the sense of discrimination from Russian authorities, security structures and local populations, which intensified after the Russian Federation's aggression against Ukraine.
Well, I'm delighted to welcome back our guest for today, Zygmunt Dzięciołowski. He's the founding editor of Open Democracy Russia. So welcome again to the program. Great to have you.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm always happy to be invited.
Pleasure is ours. We talked earlier about the Tajik connection with the recent shooting in the Moscow concert hall. Let's move on to the origins. Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, the so-called stans, the post-Russian, post-Soviet republics. Are they generating an Islamic movement of their own? We know about the Islamic State of Khorasan. Can you tell us a bit about the mechanics of that, please?
How this would be without influence from Afghanistan, I don't know. But Islamic State Khorasan was created or was born in Afghanistan, in the eastern Afghanistan, closer to Pakistani border. These are radical militant Islamists who believe that even Taliban, which kicked out Americans from Afghanistan in 2021, is sort of rotten. This is not really serious Islam. They're willing to negotiate with Americans, try compromise with, in order to develop business and then earn more money, etc., etc. So these people believe that Taliban is sort of
soft.
Yes, no, to real Islam is an offense, and this conflict between Taliban and Islam State in Afghanistan has continued since American departure in 2021, and Islam State in Afghanistan was able to carry out some very impressive terrorist attacks, like they attacked Kabul airport, killing 13 American Marines returning to America, or they attacked schools or maternity wards. But on the other hand, one has to say that Taliban is pretty pretty efficient fighting Islam State, and some experts believe that success of Taliban in fighting Islam State made Islam State to turn more attention to other countries than Afghanistan, to go on with their activities in Europe and in Russia.
Yes.
In Europe, we had arrest of Islam State groups related to Khorasan, planning attacks at cathedrals in Köln, for example, in Germany, in the city of Cologne. It's not a very sort of large organization. Western secret services, especially Americans who follow the situation very closely, they sort of believe that the number of active members of Khorasan Islam State is about 6,000. This is not a big army, but they are militant revolutionaries willing to sacrifice their life in order to sort of build Khorasan Caliphate, transnational state, because they are not happy with national states. They want one united Islam Caliphate. Everybody believes Allah and praise to Muhammad, and yes. This is their aim. This is this Caliphate idea.
What were the exact origins of this movement? I mean, you mentioned, just as we were starting to come into the studio, that the republics were very secular under Soviet rule, and now suddenly not suddenly, but over a period of time, they seem to have absorbed this Islamist influence. That's an accurate?
This is the interesting thing, how it develops there, because when Soviet Union collapsed, and I remember from my personal visit to Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, they were pretty secular. There was some kind of long Islam tradition, but this was never totally eradicated. But they were not Islam states. But now when you go to Uzbekistan, and now when you go to Tajikistan or Kyrgyzstan, you would see more Islam presence in their daily life. Men would pray five times a day, and they know where is Mecca. They would go to mosques. It's soft Islam. It's not radical Islam. They would drink vodka. Uzbeks will be always willing to share a drink with you, which is completely forbidden. But this is soft Islam. This is soft Islam. But at the same time, these are poor countries, poor nations. Their economies are weak. There are dictatorships, and this is very fertile soil for some, especially among young people, to become radicalized. Especially when you have inspiration coming from the outside, when you have inspiration coming from Middle East, and you have to also remember that when Russia decided to move to Syria in order to save President Assad regime, one of the reasons how they explained it in their propaganda to their own public was they're sort of helping President Assad, and they're also going to fight Islam State, the most dangerous evil for the whole world, with which Americans are not able to sort things out.
Yes.
I remember very well Russian propaganda, let's say 2016, 2017, when the Russians were very active in Syria, and this need to fight Islam State, the need to fight Islam State was presented as their sort of national mission. And I remember when Palmyra, this famous archaeological site, was liberated, they sent Petersburg Symphony Orchestra to Palmyra with famous conductor Gergiev to demonstrate their victory over the Islam State. I can assume that this anti-Islam State propaganda was very poorly perceived by people closely linked to the Islam State, not in Syria, but in other parts of the world. So Russia is their enemy.
Is Russia in this sense? Is Russia fighting the wrong war?
Russia went to Syria in order to demonstrate to the whole world that it is able to strike in different regions. It was like playing two chessboards, here Ukraine and here Syria. But actually, cynical Kremlin leadership doesn't care about Islam State, and it really sort of wants to know who is dangerous for them. But these ideological things, this is too complicated, I think. But this is a real danger now. It's estimated that about 5 million migrant workers from Central Asian states regularly work in Russia. These stats are not really sort of very reliable because it fluctuates. Like after the outbreak of Ukrainian invasion, a lot of Asians returned to Asia. Also now it is believed that Asians are not very keen to return to Russia because there have been numerous cases that Tajiks or Uzbeks were sent to the front, were somehow kidnapped or hijacked or forced if they had debts, they were forced to, or some irregularities with documents, they were forced by Russian security people to sign contracts and go to the front. So, and they don't want this, and they know it's dangerous. But still, the biggest problem for the Russian economy at the moment is not sanctions, it's shortage of labor, and the only source for additional labor for people who can work in their military industries or construction sites, this is from Uzbekistan and Tajikistan.
Is it possible to analyze a racist, a post-imperial attitude that the Russians have towards these towards the republics of Central Asia?
It's a very good question. Very good question. One of my best friends who used to live in Moscow now is Russian service of the Radio Liberty journalist. He is a Tajik, and I remember quite often when there were problems with Tajiks in Moscow, he was worried to allow his younger son to go to the center. He said, listen, this is too dangerous and you look like a Tajik, and even though you speak Russian without any accent, because it can be dangerous, you have to be careful. Russians live in this kind of situation now that they need a scapegoat. They need somebody who can be revenged for all the problem they have. And these people from Central Asia are easiest targets.
And yet, curiously, paradoxically rather, they need them as a pool of labour to support the economy.
Yes, but they try to. They are exploited. They are paid lowest wages. They look different. They look different than Russian. They have black hair. They have brownish skin. They look different, and. Russians are racist to some degree. It is, and it's demonstrated. It's demonstrated, especially in times of trouble, when you need somebody to be blamed for the problems.
How do you see the evolution of the Islamic State in Khorasan?
Well, we have to see. Well,
you mentioned that there are only 6,000 hardened revolutionaries, but is that enough? Is that?
And at the same time, it is at the same time, Western security services believe that Afghanistan state is pretty successful fighting with Islam State. These Taliban people who have pretty good contacts with Moscow. Taliban is officially registered as a terrorist organization by the Russian state, but the Russian government is really happy to receive the high-ranking Taliban delegations for negotiations in Moscow, because they need every ally now, every possible. But at the same time, believe in chaotic times of international chaos, which is fertile soil for organizations like for these militant groups. You know, you believe that you need for radical methods. You look for radical methods to create such ideal world, the world you want to be.
The worse it gets, the better it gets.
Yes. So these people have no reasons to think about. Like I mentioned to you, there was one of the leaders of the Khorasan Islam State registered his statement a couple of years ago. He's no longer alive, but he said, listen, for us it's better to kill elderly women in the Western Europe rather than a battalion of soldiers, because killing this elderly woman creates fear, and that's what we want. If we sort of spread the fear, we would be able to achieve our success shorter in shorter period of time. In such chaotic world, as we live now, these groups, we can hear about them.
We'll have to finish on that note. Zygmunt Dzięciołowski, thank you very much for coming into the studio and talking to us.
Thank you.
And that's all that we have time for. Join us next time for How We Got Here.